So welcome everybody. We are so thrilled to be here. Thank you all for joining us on Lasell's official second book launch for Becoming the Designated Calm Person workbook. And we'll get deeper into her book in the next few moments, but I just wanted to start with a brief introduction to Lasell and just her background, and then she'll lead us off with a short orienting practice. And then we'll get into some of the Q&A and some of the exercises from her book. So thank you all for joining us on this wonderfully auspicious occasion. So Lasell Bartlett integrates over 50 years of experience in the fields of body-mind awareness and meditation with professional expertise as a clinical social worker and a PATH International therapeutic riding instructor and equine specialist in mental health and learning. In private practice, she facilitates trauma resolution from early childhood trauma, falls, medical trauma, and meditation dissociations, helping people develop a sense of safety that can support the best relationships imaginable. To enhance her professional offerings, Bartlett became a practitioner of somatic experiencing, bodywork and somatic education, brain spotting, somatic resilience and regulation, and transforming touch. In addition to assisting regional, national, and international somatic experiencing and EQUUSOMA trainings, she has presented on trauma healing at conferences for mental health and therapeutic riding professionals. Bartlett lives on a small farm in rural Virginia with 2 horses, 7 sheep, 3 donkeys, 17 goats, 30 guineas, 2 cats, 3 dogs, and her bestest ever human friend. She's a training assistant and approved session provider for students in the SE and EQUUSOMA training programs. And so with that in mind, I don't think I could summarize Lasell's background any better than that. But she is so much more rich and multifaceted than just this tiny little blurb. And so what I'll do is offer Lasell a chance to share a little bit more about the nuances of her being by having her lead us through a short orienting practice to get us started today with these celebrations. So Lasell, I'll hand it off to you.
Great. And thank you for the introduction, Sarah. And thank you all for showing up live. And thank you to those who watch this later. I'm actually going to do one of the exercises, lead one of the exercises from the book, which is an orienting exercise under the section about resources. And this is an exercise I call external resources. Let me see if I want a little. I'll just read the couple of paragraphs that introduce a couple of exercises. For people who haven't seen this, I've set it up really as a workbook so that there's some descriptive stuff and then going into with most of the descriptive stuff and the exercises, there is a mostly blank page with some reflective questions. So I will include the questions after I lead the exercise. So personal resources is the phrase I use to describe whatever brings us a sense of relief, support, joy, or okayness. Resources can be people, animals, places, objects, experiences, beliefs, or more. Resources can be real or imaginary, living or remembered. We can have external resources outside our bodies, like viewing a field of wildflowers, and internal resources inside our bodies, like the feeling of a full heart when petting your favorite animal friend. And then I ask some reflective questions right then, but I'll take us into the external resources exercise. And you can follow this as much as you want or just listen. So standing or sitting comfortably. I think most of us are sitting right now. Allow your breathing to be just as it is. No need to change anything. And with soft eyes, feeling as if they are resting back and down into the area behind your eyeballs, let your gaze wander, noticing colors and shapes in your environment. And being curious, what do you notice that is pleasant in your environment? Some information that just comes into your soft eyes. Let your gaze settle wherever it wants to. Gently look inside to notice what sensations you are feeling while you are gazing in the direction of something pleasant. And allow your attention to rest with the pleasant or neutral sensations in your body. Be curious about any changes as you pay attention to what is pleasant, especially any feelings of relief or settling. So those are the written exercises from the book. I did ad-lib a little bit, but not much. The reflective question for this exercise is, what did you learn about your external resources? I'll just leave a moment for you to think about that a little bit. Yeah. I have another one I'll read a little later, but we're going to chat now, I think.
Thanks, Lasell, for that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I was really drawn to my two dogs are just off camera, and there was something about the visual of their silky fur that I noticed resulted in like a more expansive kind of quality in here. And I felt kind of like my seat hitting the seat of my chair more, and like a tingly aliveness on the inside. Yeah. Yeah.
As I hear you say that, sort of my back body settles. I wasn't really aware that it wasn't, but it's just sort of like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Just like that. Mm-hmm.
like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think my primary intention with this becoming the designated calm person, well, the unconscious part, of course, is that I have needed to practice this a lot. And I get a lot of practice. But I didn't realize until I was putting this together, the importance of me, who's often in that role, also turning to others to let them be my designated calm person. So I just want to, it becomes it's not like one person that's their role all the time. We get to shift that, especially amongst close friends. And I think all of us know some animals who become our designated calm beings at times when we just need a place where we can feel safe and let down because we've been feeling distressed about something. So
I appreciate you naming that, because I think so often there can be this tendency sometimes that we have to be the caregivers or the caretakers. And it's like, oh, what's it like to also imagine the possibility that I might request someone else to be a calm person for me, at times.
yeah,
And it's not just this, oh, I'm always in this sort of caretaking role, or this role of being the regulated one, you know. It's like,
yeah,
oh, what if more of us could be more of that for more of one another.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just before we came on this, I was sharing with you that I heard from a friend who's been impacted by the flooding in Western North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I was grateful to hear, because that told me that she's alive and well and has some access to internet. And her response to my question of "Are you okay?" was, "I'm being the designated calm person." And my response back to her was, "Well, I'll be that for you anytime you need it." So, and she appreciated that. So we get to take turns with this. And this was an offshoot from my memoir, mostly a memoir, Getting Along with Rusty. Rusty required me to be more of a calm person than I was when I first owned him. We have a 27-year history. And I had this faulty idea that he would be the calm being for me when I needed it. And he wasn't interested in that role at all. It confused him when I came to him with my worries and distress. Took me a while to figure that out, but I'm pretty good now with being the calm person for him. He likes that. Yeah.
I imagine that Lasell, in all the time that you spent in the therapeutic riding world, that there may have been other times and places where you may have noticed other situations, where having a designated calm person, or in the equine-assisted psychotherapy and learning world, where that idea of the human being a regulator for the animal, as opposed to the traditional sense of, oh, the animal will regulate for the human kind of idea, may have been a source of um, motivation or impetus for some of what you've written.
Yeah, it is. And I'm reminded by what you say that this designated calm person concept came from therapeutic riding program where I worked, came from me because of the when there's an emergency, there's protocols for who does what and how they do it and the sequence and who's in charge and giving directions. I was never fond of crises in a riding ring. So I often co-calmed with somebody on the team, and that worked out fine. But as I learned more about somatic experiencing and the needs of a nervous system to have attention and time and space and a calm person in order to settle, and this is for somebody who maybe fell off of a horse, or the human team members who were upset by somebody falling, because it's like, oh, that's not what we want to have happen. But this came out of really wanting to say something, identify a role for the therapeutic riding teams, that somebody's going to be there for the nervous system of somebody initially, if somebody's fallen off or had some sort of big startle related to the horse, for the students, focused on them, but then also taking that to the volunteers and the horses and the management staff, whoever is impacted by it. So that's the roots of it, and I talk about that some in Getting Along with Rusty. And so becoming the designated calm person is sort of like I want to say a baby, like, if you have a spider plant, right? And it sends out little young spider plants. So that's what these workbooks are, is a little organic. I don't know. I just saw that spider plant image. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, an
And all
offshoot.
that, an offshoot of the Getting Along with Rusty, like one of the. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
So who would be your ideal audience for the becoming the designated calm person workbook? You know, where do you see its applicability, or where do
At,
you hope its applicability will spread out to?
right. At this point, it's applicable for anybody in relationship with any being, as far as I'm concerned. So I use it and coach other people at times to use it in their human relationships, because if two people are riled up, then two people are riled up. And then if one can take the breath and think it through and say, okay, I can make sure my message is heard later, but right now I need to be more in the holding space for my friend or my partner or my spouse or my child, so that they can settle and then we can converse again. So in that way, or certainly animal owners, I think most of us know from dogs and cats and horses, and I haven't owned any reptiles, so I don't know how that works, but I imagine that in some ways it would work with them too. Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah,
So basically, if you have a nervous system, there's
yeah,
something about this book that will likely have some applicability in some context.
yeah. And I do in this book, and I've got some other workbooks coming. I do talk about survival states. I talk about them also in my Rusty book. And I'm going to talk about them in the other workbooks that are in the work. And Sarah, you and I have both used F words for survival stuff. So survival states.
You want to have a
uh,
chat about that, Lasell? Do you want
yeah,
to
let's
do?
have a chat about that, because
Yeah, sure.
you've come up with some other F words that I really love. So we
Yeah.
can talk about it. In this book, I talk about find, fight, flight, fawn, and fix, freeze, and flop. And they softly correlate with Stephen Porges's polyvagal states. But you've added some to the F words.
Gosh, a lot of people have added to the F words. There's been so many contributions to the F list over time, and it's a mnemonic that really only exists in English. I don't know if other languages in their language have tried to create some variant to have all these words have the starting letter be one word, one letter. You know, I don't know if that's a thing that happens in other languages. Certainly not in French, I can say that, but maybe there's another language. I'd love to know if anyone is in the know. I would love to hear about it. But at least in English, there's been these attempts to talk about um, nervous system states and or behaviors that occur in certain nervous system states that start with the letter F as a way to remember them. And certainly we can talk a little bit more about them, but I did want to give props and credit where credit is due. When we were creating the EQUUSOMA training program, and this was a number of years ago, I think it was very early on, I was asking Lasell for her help, because Lasell and I communicate on a regular basis as friends and as well as colleagues. And I was like, Lasell, I need an F word to refer to relational orienting, that call and response of I call and someone comes, or someone attends to my call or my bid for connection or a need or something. And I said, I need an F word for that. You know, it feels like there should be one. And it was Lasell who came up with find. So we have just the great honor of having Lasell here, who, you know, I've taught about find and thwarted find ever since. And certainly it's become very well associated with the EQUUSOMA training program as part of the knowledge base that we teach about. But it's Lasell who came up with the word in the first place. And so maybe we start with that. Maybe we start with your list of F words that you talk about in your book, and then we'll kind of jump off if it feels helpful to folks.
Yeah. Um, So I can just read because it's really short in this, and then maybe
Sure.
you can expand with, because I know one word that I hear from you, which is flow state, which
Mm.
is not in my book, but it's in my experience. So I like that a lot. So finding takes place when we are engaged, connected, and feeling safe. We are designed for this activity to start at birth with the ideal situation between newborn and parent or caregiver of attuned proximity, including touch, soft eye contact, and facial expressions showing kindness, attention, and welcoming. We also find ourselves later in life in restorative moments of alone time. And I will add to that restorative moments of having safe find moments with other adults. Even if it was thwarted when we were young, we can always gain those experiences now. Flight, fight, fawn, and fix. We engage in these survival tactics when we feel unsafe, yet we can mobilize. We flee to get away from danger, both by moving away and by flinching and retreating inward. When we can't flee, we fight to protect ourselves from danger. We fawn by acting friendly and engaged in a relationship, even though inside ourselves we are feeling threatened. We make efforts to fix others when we imagine we will feel safer and more settled if they are more regulated and acting justly and with kindness. Freeze. We may freeze when we perceive a life threat, feel unsafe, and are unable to move. A technical term for this is tonic immobilization, meaning we retain muscle tone but are unable to move. Flop. Flopping occurs when we perceive a life threat, feel unsafe, and collapse. Both freeze and flop are immobilized states. A technical term for flop is atonic immobilization, meaning we have lost muscle tone and are unable to move. I'm wondering if you have anything to add, or whether this might even be a little window for seeing if there are questions or things people want to share, because sometimes I know some of the people here I know, and they have some exposure to these concepts, and they might have some things to say or ask. How's that sound, Sarah?
Sure, we can do that, and then we can jump in with commentary or deepening. So if anyone has any questions here, feel free to either put your hand up and use the hand raise icon, or to unmute your audio. And we've got Pia. Feel free to unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for being here. That's awesome. My question is, like, when you mentioned flop, I immediately kind of re-experienced a fall I had actually 12 months ago to this day. And would flop be like, because when I fell, I broke my neck, and so just a bit of history, it was quite a traumatic experience, and my body went into flop. Like I couldn't feel anything. It was very loose. I know, because I know I tried to get up. And I'm wondering now, because I'm ready to kind of integrate what happened 12 months ago. How do I integrate? How do I integrate these flop, fight, flight, all of it's coming up. I'm ready.
Very slowly, a little bit at a time, so that you're not overwhelmed during. There's like this line: integration requires little bits and a lot of time for integration, especially if it's a really big deal fall, which it sounds like it was.
Yeah.
So do you have somebody that you work with somatically?
No, I don't, because I'm in a small country town in Western Australia, and no one does somatic healing here. So I struggle with that. Yeah.
We do have one of our EQUUSOMA team members is in Western Australia. She's about an hour outside of Perth, and she has a farm, and she's one of our former faculty members. And if you're wanting someone within your time zone, Mel Keane might be an option for you to work with that. So Mel Keane is one of our somatic experiencing practitioner colleagues within the EQUUSOMA world, and she would be trained in doing some of the falls work in this titrated way that Lasell is talking about, that you might want to reach out, because there are certainly people around who can support that process or that journey. Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be great, because I do go up to Perth, so I do like that in-person experience.
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. Falls are an interesting experience that many equestrians have, and there's so much tied into falls, and it can be very nuanced work to start to renegotiate the different elements of a fall, things that are incomplete, movements and different writing responses or equilibrium responses or feelings or sensations, things that didn't get to happen because the fall was too quick. It was too fast. It was disorienting. And there can be lots of layers relationally and shock physically, as well. So, yeah, there's a lot there. So thank you, Pia, for naming that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it reminds me when I come to do the third workbook, which is after the fall, restoring confidence and balance, to really talk about the importance of doing this work with somebody. So it's tricky. Okay, I'm writing books and putting them out in the world, and some of this work is best done in the company of somebody. I address that. I do say that, but I'm just going to say it again right here. There's, depending on how much ability we have, how much resilience, how much internal work we've already done, some of this we can do on our own for sure, but some of it needs a designated calm person. So first we'll become this, and then we can do that for people who are recovering from falls.
Yeah. There's it reminded of the quote from Peter Levine, which was, no one can do it for us, but we can't do it alone. And I think this is one of those places, especially if the fall, and you don't have to answer this, Pia, that's more of a good broad answer than I'm going to share here, but if the fall is sitting on top of other experiences, then like the fall is sitting on top of like this other adversity thing and this other thing and this other injury and then this car accident and it's sitting on top of relational stuff from our family of origin and maybe a birth related experience and and so there can be so much in the nuances that we can sometimes do parts of it like Lasell said, and for so many of us we weren't held by a calm attuned person. And to attempt to try to do some sort of work that can be complex, like falls work, without that extra set of hands or that witness or someone who can be the doula of the fall, so to speak, can sometimes just be a replay of what we've already been through, which is having to do it alone, And we have a nervous system that knows how to heal and that knows what it needs to do. And sometimes what it needs to do is be in the presence of calm hands and another calm nervous system that can help it renegotiate the elements of that fall that were too quick or that happened that didn't receive the support that was needed at that time. Yeah. So thank you.
That's very true for me. Yeah, thank you so much. Like I'm from my heart. Thank you for that. It's beautiful. Thank you both.
You're welcome, Pia. Thank you for raising your hand and being willing to share. a very common issue in the horse world, and I think deserves a lot more visibility than it gets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Any questions or wonderings? We were talking about the Fs, the F states. Pascal.
Hi everyone. Hello from England.
Hello.
It's 12:30 midnight. I love seeing the daylight where other people are, which is brilliant. So yeah, I'm so delighted to have got my book, and yeah, it's wonderful. And it's lovely to meet everybody. So Lasell and I I'd posted something online a while ago about the Fs, and a couple of the ones that I use were added to it. So I love also collecting more Fs. I'd love to know how flow fits in. So a couple of the ones that I use is so where you had find. So I added in a while ago friend, because I think sometimes we feel like, oh, these are all kind of quite separating, or either fight, flight. They feel quite dysfunctional, whereas I think obviously they have a protective function. But so obviously there's fawn, but then there's also, I added friend because one thing that I realized was that one of my very strong reactions when something overwhelming happens, for example, hearing the news of a death of someone in the family, my natural go-to is to phone a friend, literally, to the point where one time I just couldn't be on my own, and I literally just asked who can come and sit with me, and yeah, so I think we need to reclaim the Fs from this sort of negativity which surrounds them sometimes. And to me, the friend one it's not the same as fawn, because fawn is appeasing somebody else, or you feel that person is part of the threat, and you're trying to reduce the threat by getting along with them in a way or doing what they want. But friend is really different. It's a genuine, I need a friend right now, I'm going to reach out. And I think the find is the closest I've ever heard someone saying to that, of I'm going to reach out and someone else is actually going to respond to that call. So I love that one. And another one that I added was actually, I used, instead of flop, I've used fold.
Yeah.
Almost feels very much like a physical folding, or like folding your cards and throwing them in, and you play poker and it's like, I'm gonna fold, like I've got nothing left here, I'm out. Like I'm out. So that's an interesting one. And then the last one is to F it up. I'm not gonna say the F word, but that F word, F it up. So basically, and it's not the same as fight. It kind of is related to, it's kind of a fight response. Basically, you just mess something up, right? It's like instead of folding your cards, you throw them in the air and you turn the table over. And I've experienced this. I remember as a child one time, I was drawing I drew a beautiful picture of a flower. It took me hours, and I can imagine this scene very strongly. And then my older brother started annoying me, and was just getting on my nerves. And at a certain point, I just ripped up what I was drawing. And then I burst into tears and blamed him for ruining my picture. But I have a very strong desire to just like go and break something, and especially to break something that's important to me. And I know that in the world of entrepreneurship, for example, people talk about people building up a business and then burning it to the ground, and building up again and burning it to the ground. And there's something about building up and becoming overwhelmed and then just destroying it and start again. And we think we do it in relationships as well. So yeah, that's my two contributions.
Yeah, I love them. That's great. Huh. Yeah.
I'm curious about the find. Friend is a noun, and since the F states seem to refer to verbs, we wanted a verb that I had thought of friend, and I was like, I didn't want to use friend because it's not a verb, and I'm kind of pedantic that way. So
I suppose
I
for
was
me it is a verb. I suppose that technically it would be befriend.
befriend, but that's B. That's B. I'm super literal,
yeah.
so I'm just like, I
Befriending
can't use
someone,
friend.
yeah.
Friend is a verb. Befriend is a verb, but B is not F. And I was nitpicky, and at that time I was like, I need a verb that's an F that would refer to this idea of the relational, right? The relationship as
I
being
suppose, yeah, I think I see it as I would definitely use the word to friend or to like friending someone
yeah,
without the B at the beginning, but
yeah,
I don't know whether anybody else would.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think also I wanted to move away from friend because it's subsumed within tend and befriend. And that already has a very specific definition within this sort of survival states kind of thing. And some people talk about tend and befriend as being fawn, and some people talk about like befriending the enemy, right, as this appeasement behavior. And other people define tend and befriend as what you're calling friend, right? That's what we're calling find, And for me, I was like, oh, how do I move away from those connotations? Because those are already kind of tricky too. So it sounds like we have the same intention in Lasell too, like with this word find as being how you're using friend. So I really like that. It's like, here's the concept coming together.
I love what you said in the book as well about that it's also finding yourself. And with the friend, I would tend to go out and want to connect with somebody else, probably trying to find I'm actually trying to find my calm person. But actually being able to one of my sort of life mottos is hold myself with kindness. I call it my homework because HMWK, but hold myself with kindness is kind of a Buddhist practice, but I suppose it is it connected with what was written in the book about find yourself in those, being alone time, or just also just being able to get that sense of maybe the initial shock part is starting to thaw a little bit when you can actually remember to be present with yourself and find yourself, I guess.
Thank you for this.
It reminds me, Lasell, doesn't it, of that idea that we feel it on the outside first before we can internalize the template of it on the inside. The external locus of control when we're little, it is appropriate to find it on the outside. And then ideally, however many times we've felt it on the outside, that find, we can learn how to find it inside. And it becomes an internal locus of control. But at the end of the day, it's still not wrong to seek it on the outside when we're grown-ups, because there is still a time and place to have a designated calm person, even when we're grown-ups, even if we do have some good find on the inside. We're mammals at the end of the day. And it's not so black and white, like, oh, I have to only have it internally. And if I seek it externally, I'm not independent, or,
Right.
right. It's like, oh,
I
it's
get
interdependent.
triggered sometimes when I see people talking or read people talking about just overemphasizing the independence and sort of the sense that if you're strong enough, nobody will impact you type of thing. And it's like, yeah, I don't think so. We impact each other all the time. Yeah. I'm thinking I'd like to do another exercise.
Sure,
Share
please,
one.
Lasell. Yeah.
That. This is even though there will be a workbook about boundaries and consent, this is a boundaries exercise because we need to have boundaries sometimes in order to settle ourselves, or maybe often in order to settle ourselves. So this is the trombone exercise. Let's see if I do some Sort of the introductory blur. Boundaries can create distance from intrusive memories from the past and from fear-based expectations about the future. They help us be attentive in our present environment. We can develop boundaries around actual or imagined upsetting experiences. These boundaries allow us to calm ourselves and experience enough safety so we can function adequately. I talk a little bit more, but I'll go into the exercise. So, as most of these start, find a comfortable sitting or reclining position. And take a moment to notice your breath without changing anything. Begin to think about what interferes with your sense of calm. Name that, what interferes, and put it in an imaginary small bubble. Imagine you have a trombone and place this small bubble at the bell, the flared end of the trombone. Using the trombone slide feature, slowly slide the small bubble as far away as you can. Remember, this is your imagination, so your trombone can be as big as you like. Play around with slowly sliding this bubble far away, then sliding it close again, being curious about what is the right distance, the distance that feels right just now. Pause, then put your imaginary trombone down and gently look around you, noticing what's changed and how you're feeling. Using your imaginary trombone again, blow into the mouthpiece. And you can do this or imagine that you're doing this right now because here we are on Zoom. Blow into the mouthpiece as you are sliding the small bubble away, as if your blowing helps move the bubble away from you. Pause, noticing what's changing. Slowly start to slide the trombone again and notice if you want to slide the bubble further away or not as far as before. And that's the end of this exercise. The reflective question: what did you learn about your need for distance from things that interfere with your sense of calm? I know when I was doing boundary exercises as a somatic experiencing student, I was blown away by what I learned about what I really wanted as distance between me and a practice partner, because we would do this live in pairs in the trainings. I think the trainings are still set up to include this as part of them. I've been trained as an American female to accept closeness with a smile most of the time, and then to really feel in my body what was the right distance for me. And it's like, whoa, actually, sometimes even with somebody I care about, it was much further than I was surprised time and time again. So I love boundary exercises, and this is just something I made up, where we can use our imagination to send something far away with a trombone slide.
Does anyone want to share what they noticed in imagining that, using your imaginations, what you noticed in terms of how far or the distance? You don't have to describe, if you don't want to, the thing in question or the person in question or the issue in question, but just a sense of your own experience of that exercise. Louise, I noticed that you unmuted yourself. Feel free to share if you like. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. I have Lasell's book too, and I so enjoy it. And so when I was doing the trombone exercise, just me and myself, and I was reading it and practicing it, going, oh, this is so cool. I can use that for myself and how to practice, and I can use it for other people. But then something really interesting happened just then. So, and it speaks to having that designated calm person. And I was listening to Lasell talk then, and I was really into her exercise, and I had so much clarity about it. And it was quite different to my experience of me reading it, by having that designated calm person with the soft light and Lasell's beautiful voice. And my experience is quite different.
What stands out for you the most, Louise? Yeah.
All my senses came alive. I think when I was reading it for the book Catch, I thought, wow, this is really interesting, and I can do it. But it was different. My sensory system was more contained, but because I'm feeling safe and the calmness of Lasell and yourself, I'm feeling much more open.
And I'm thinking,
So thanks,
I need to
Lasell.
do
That was
this in
great.
I need to do this in audiobook format. I'm thinking
Yeah,
that's
that would be cool.
wonderful
Yeah,
feedback. Thank you, Louise. Yeah.
yeah, nice idea.
And I'd be curious, maybe you can drop me a line in the future. If you do it again alone, having had these two different experiences with the same exercise, what happens is that sense of being held and open still there because you've had this experience, or without somebody actually there with you, it's dissipated some? I'm just curious. Curious. Yeah.
It really speaks to the power of what we're talking about here, that idea that, there's a value of having the resonance of a calm nervous system and what it helps with integrating, compared to doing something alone. We can absolutely do some stuff alone. And then there's some other stuff where we're just, what is it you say, Lasell, all the time? It's in our nature to get along. And
Yeah.
our wiring is, Louise, even just as you were saying it, like your hands, you're like, there's this holding, and something opened up more. Mm-hmm. And having Lasell's designated calm person nervous system facilitating the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have mentioned
Go
that
ahead, Lasell.
there are some other workbooks coming. And these actually, probably about half the exercises in these books came from my original manuscript of my Getting Along with Rusty book, which was twice as big as the actual book. Because I was looking at it being really full of exercises and then little stories in between. And then it developed, it said, we want to be separate things. So I have a few exercises in my memoir. And then the other exercises in these, I make them up. I might be working with a client or out with my horses or sheep, and some idea comes to me and it's like, oh yeah. And it's based on, I've had input from from you, Sarah, from Somatic Experiencing, from different modalities and people I've studied with over many, many years. But it's something I really love. So I there's parts of writing books and publishing them that is tedious, but most of it is when I set a boundary around my time and what's calling me, what needs to be done, it's like, okay, I got 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, and I bring my attention into at this point my next book, which is Sensing Our Groundedness. I love it. I love it. Love it. And I mix them up as I'm writing too, so it's fun.
Well, with that said, since I recognize the time, we had promised that there would be a draw for a copy of one of each of Lasell's books, autographed by Lasell, to those of you who are here at the time of the draw. So we were trying to figure out a decent way to do it, aside from putting all the names in a hat, because people are coming and going. And, I can only work off of the names that are here at the time that we do the draw. So Lasell, what I figured I would do is I found an easy way enough to do this, is if you could give me a number between 1 and 20, just pick a number out of the hat and I'll find the 20th person, or the person that you give the number that you give. So if you wanted to just pick a random number, the pressure on Lasell to pick a number.
And I'm thinking, when I've done draws, I go online and get a random calculator type of, but we don't have that. No. So
between 1 and
15.
20. 15. All right, let me count.
Yep.
Let's see.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14. Pia.
Oh.
That happened. Number 15 in our list of participants is
I was gonna buy it. That's so exciting.
Great.
So there you go.
Yeah. Somehow, Pia, I'll need your mailing address, and then I will get
Shall I put that in the I can put
I would
that in
say, if you can put it in the chat directly to either myself or Lasell, not to everybody, so not everyone ends up having your address, but either to me and I'll send it to Lasell, or to Lasell directly if you just want to put it in the chat. And an email address as well would be helpful. And then we can get that over to you. Yeah. That would be lovely. Lots to look forward to. Yeah. So as Pia does that, some people a while ago had asked about flow, and so maybe I'll mention something about that quickly, and then Lasell, if there's any final thoughts that you'd like to add to that, if that feels, unless you have a different idea for how you might like to wrap up the time while we're waiting to get that information from our winner.
I like the idea of flow. Let's, I these new words, friend. Thank you, Pascal, for that, and flow. Thank you, Sarah, for that. And yeah, let's dive into flow a little bit before we finish up here.
Cool. Let's do that then.
Yeah.
So flow emerged out of the idea that there are so many other thwarted responses. So fight and flight and freeze, I heard what you were saying, Pascal, about the negative, and I go, all of those survival responses have a place. They're all needed, and they often get a bad reputation, unfortunately, and yet they're really helpful. And there's lots of other things that can get thwarted or interrupted as well. And so I wanted a word that could sort of be a catch-all that wouldn't require us to find a million Fs, because it got to a point where I was thinking, gosh, we could just keep adding Fs to this list. And I laughed when you said, F it up, or, Pascal, which I got a giggle out of, because it kind of draws a little bit into the fight response, that idea of like destructive power, or, like having an angry response, it kind of seems like a subset almost in some variant, but I was like, oh, like there's other things other things. And if we start finding all the F's, like there's also just the F word, some people cope with stress by doing that, and so there's all sorts of F words, and I was like, gosh, I wonder if we could find some word, we got the key ones, and then flow kind of came in, of any other kind of natural response or natural impulse that we might have that got interrupted. Because there's a sense of flow and we can follow. And I was borrowing a bit on the page of ethology for a moment around, when we're in the conditions in which our species evolved to thrive and do well, we're following those impulses. We're doing what our nature intended, and anything can get interrupted. A horse that's in a stall that can't get to its friends, that can't follow its desire for forage and freedom. What would we call that? Thwarted freedom, thwarted foraging, thwarted. And I was like, well, that's a lot of things. It's thwarted find, it's thwarted forage, it's thwarted freedom, it's thwarted flow. There's a flow that's interrupted. I want to follow an impulse into something and I can't. And it also came out of a page of, I think, the neurodiversity affirming world around when we get into, I think of a neurodivergent person who's in their flow, they're in their hyperfocus, they're in something that's really enjoyable, and to be nudged out of that, to be dislodged out of a state of flow can be very frustrating. And so I kind of was like, let's use flow. And so we've had a bit of flow, all of us together at moments today, led by Lasell. And we'll have a chance to wrap up in a few moments. But if you were to imagine a time where you felt flow, where you were able to feel an impulse and follow that impulse and experience a sense of capacity or I can, or triumph, or nourishment, or something, some sort of something. Could even be fight. I mean, gosh, any of that can fall under flow, really. What wanted to flow? And what was it like when you got to feel flow? And something got to happen, and it was supported, maybe even by a calm being. Notice what happens on the inside when you connect with that sense of flow. Something going as it should. Something that feels effortless. Feels like it's doing what it was intended to do, and it felt like it was supported and it was okay. And there might be a sense on the inside to that. There might be an image or a sensation, a time where you felt that, or a movement, or an emotion, or even one word. And maybe we wrap up with that, Lasell. What's your sense? If we were to ask those of you who wanted to share one word from what it feels like to connect with a sense of flow, and we'll use that to wrap up our time, this little mini celebration of sorts for Lasell's second book. And I'm so excited about future books. This is wonderful, wonderful. And so as we support Lasell and her connecting with her authorship flow in all these books that are wanting to flow forward out of her creative and clinical mind, I'm just really grateful for finding flow with my friend Lasell and the calm person she is for me a lot of the time. And I really feel that support. And when I feel the flow and the support from Lasell, there's something that just feels really grounding for me. And there's like a stillness and a fullness. Can I pick two words? I'm going to pick two. Feel free to pick two if you like. I'm going to cheat.
You're making your own rules. It's
I'm making my own,
fine.
I'm hosting this darn thing.
Right.
So I'm going to go with fullness. Yeah. And stillness.
Mm.
Thank you, Lasell, for what you bring the world and what you bring my world to my world as well. It helps me find flow. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm going to follow suit with 2 words. If I can remember them now. So, soft waves. Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely.
I have I'm sitting on it's basically a swivel stool that I got when I had an active hands-on practice and people would be on the table. So my body's doing this little swivel wave. So I don't know what's visible on Zoom, but I'm just telling you. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Lasell. Anyone else want to share a word or 2 about when you connect with flow? Or possibly how find helps you find flow? Yeah, Pia.
I'll go connection and silence. Silence from the intrusive thoughts that can sometimes get in the way of what's here right now. That's what I found in that moment. Yeah.
Thanks, Pia. Anyone else want to share as we go to wrap up?
Hi, I'm Christine from South Carolina. I wanted to say the word that came to my mind, this is the first time I've experienced this group or these books, and I'm excited to get started. But the word for me is safe.
Lovely. Thanks, Christine.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Judy adds in the chat box, Judy adds ease and gratefulness. Thanks, Judy.
So my flow word is spaciousness. And sometimes the feeling of spaciousness can feel quite empty and dark and scary. But if I think about flow with spaciousness, then suddenly it feels like I can sort of imagine lots of almost like colorful, swirling, sort of almost like being inside a crystal ball, sort of colorful, swirling patterns. So the spaciousness is actually very dynamic and feels reassuring suddenly.
Lovely. Thanks, Pascal. Lisa in the chat says, finding myself. Lovely.
Sarah,
Yes.
thank
Lasell.
you for offering to host this and all you've done to invite people here and have this space and your support
It's my pleasure.
for this and many other things over the years. So, yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. We'll put the link for those of you who are watching via video. We'll have the links to Lasell's book. If you want to go ahead and grab some copies, we'll put the links to Amazon there. and anything else that's upcoming that may be of interest. So stay tuned. Be sure to watch until the end for those links and that information. And thank you all for those of you who were able to come and participate live with us today. I think we ended up having quite a number of people, so it was a nice turnout. So thank you all for coming and for being part of it. We look forward to Lasell's next book. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. And Lasell, I meant to ask, I know sometimes you offer sessions and consults. I know you can't offer sessions outside of state lines where you're not within jurisdiction or you're not licensed, but I don't know if you're open for consultation at all. But you know, your contact information will be in this video as well. We'll make sure that we have that if people are wanting to book.
I'm actually moving from clinical to coaching model, so
Okay, great.
wide
Great.
open.
Great. So if people are interested in booking with Lasell for some coaching, somatic type coaching sessions on any of the topics from any of her books, feel free to reach out to Lasell and or for consultation support. Lasell is one of our consultation providers for students in the EQUUSOMA and also in the SE training programs. And you can also consult with her even if you're not in either program. If you found anything from what she's written about compelling, feel free to reach out. She books appointments. So,
Or if you want a custom made whatever, you know, tell me what's going on, and it's like, oh, let's do this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Lovely.
Good.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. We'll wrap up. We'll have this video up on YouTube in no time. In the meantime, see you soon. Take good care and good luck with your explorations around designated calm person. Take good care, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.